Hello, thanks for watching. This is Jim Birkett. You probably are question the title of this little speech, Beneath the Timeline, an Early Decade. What's that all about? Well, what I want to talk about is a particular early decade in desalination, and not just the landmarks, but really what it was like, what it felt like to be there. Sort of the atmosphere of the endeavor. I chose 1967 to start because that is when I first became involved in desalination. I chose 77 as the ending place because that is when the first significant seawater plant was uh, uh, contracted for in the early Jeddah RO, seawater RO. Now we entered at about the time of we're beginning here, 67. Ringing in our ears was still the challenge by President John F. Kennedy to produce desalination at of significant size and significant reliability and a cost which would be acceptable to those who really needed it as a step toward pushing a broader, wider scale desal in the far future. We were unsure that we could do that, and yet we had a great optimism. Already we had seen multi-stage flash appear in the commercial versions, and electrodialysis for treating the brackish water, but we realized that there was a long way to go, and although these represented great strides, we were far from getting to the end point. Research was going on variously, funded by the governments such as the United States and the Office of Saline Water, also Atomic Energy Agency in the Great Britain, an active group in South Africa, TNO in the Netherlands, is an Israeli group, and a lot of work in Japan by the Water Reuse Promotion Center. And then there was research being done by the manufacturers, people such as Weir and Sasakura, and Ionics, research by suppliers of materials, especially metals, and so there's and opportunist research in industry. The number of publications was, well, quite limited, few and far between. We had Desalination, the journal, published by Elsevier and ably edited by Miriam Balaban. We had the weekly 4-page newsletter by Richard Arlen Smith, which actually Water Desalination Report, which continues to this day under different management, and not much else other than the published proceedings of various conferences. And let's get to the conferences. They were not held at regular intervals. They were quite small affairs by today's standards. Just a few hundred people and we'd be considered that very successful, and a few dozen papers. The papers were all delivered sequentially, no simultaneous sessions, and so as an attendee, you felt a sort of an obligation to attend every paper, whether it was in your field or not, which meant that you knew what the competition was doing, you knew challenges, you looked for something in some little trick going on in the other fellow's field that you could apply to your own. There was not what they call today siloing of Here, the membrane people who won't speak to the thermal people who won't speak to these other people. It was rather fun. And one of the things the attendees did, of course, was swap stories, not formally, but informally, about where they'd been and what they'd done, and especially field trips. Field trips were quite remarkable because some of the early plants were located in remote places and under rather harsh living conditions. Visiting places like Del City, Texas, or the Farasan Islands in the Red Sea, or even in Kuwait, not Kuwait City so much as some of the small plants in what you could almost call the outback, or out in the what was called the neutral zone. You could have a good time. The plant operators were so good to see you in those days because they never had any visitors, and you were a welcome, just a novelty to the plant operator, and he would invite you. He'd invite you after work back to his home, to his villa, where with his wife, and invite you to dinner, and she'd cook you up a nice home cooked meal, and things would be, well, just extremely pleasant. And that was sort of the way things went in some of those early days. There was a sense of small community. There were not very many of you working in the field, and you came to know each other and have fun. You became impressed by the progress which was going on. The research, the confidence was that probably the next big thing would be reverse osmosis, and everyone followed the RO progress in the laboratories. At first, as you know, the research began in roughly about 1960, 60 years ago, now, and very soon it became clear that this was the next big thing, and we didn't realize at the time in '77 that it would remain so for so long. And today we still search for the next big thing, and one of the things we've learned from is it's going to take a long time from when we first recognize that until we get it to maturity in operation. Well, I'm rambling, but I just wanted to tell you that you had to be there. There was a sense of, I hesitate to use the word intimacy because it might be taken out of context, but there was just a feeling of community which we've had to sacrifice a little bit due to our success, and yet success was what we sought and what we have achieved, and we should be proud also. Thank you so much.